Okay, before we start reading tonight and continuing on chapter 3 of the Heart of the Lotus Sutra by Daisaku Ikeda, I want to leave a quick message because I've been meaning to do this for 2 or 3 weeks for our special good friend Mr. Lee from Australia. Mr. Lee is a Mahayana Buddhist. I don't believe that he's a Nichiren Buddhist, but he has been following our weekly study for years, literally. And I've mentioned Mr. Lee in response to Mr. Lee's comments to me before. And I just want to let you know, Mr. Lee, I don't see those comments unless I go into YouTube and do it on the computer. I don't see it. I don't see anybody's comments if I just view the video on my telephone or if I just view it on a pad. And so I have not been seeing some of the things you've been seeing. So once I get done with this again, I'm going to go back through, and you've left lots of questions. I'm going to take those all up at the end of the reading of this when we've caught up with the first section of this. So Mr. Lee, I love you, bro, and please keep hanging. Chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Here we go tonight, chapter 3, starting on page, I believe that is page 57. Everybody's with me? Okay, here we go. Shari Hatsu Go Ju Jo Butsu Irai Shuju Inen Shuju Hiyu Koen Gonkyo Mushu Hoben Indo Shujo Rori Sho Jaku says, that's Sanskrit. Shari Future, ever since I attained Buddhahood, I have through various causes and various similes widely expounded my teachings and have used countless expedient means to guide living beings and cause them to renounce their attachments. Here Shakyamuni elaborates on the passage immediately preceding the one in which he discussed the wisdom of the Buddhas. In this passage, by contrast, he reveals this wisdom in his own life. Ever since I attained Buddhahood refers to the period after Shakyamuni attained enlightenment and before he taught the Lotus Sutra. During this time, he expounded various provisional sutras, and here he clarifies the distinctive character of those teachings, the expedient means of the provisional sutras. An expedient means is a device that the Buddha employs to help people attain enlightenment. In other words, it's there as a bridge or a supplement to help people get into the door. He says, an expedient means is a device that the Buddha employs to help people attain enlightenment. From the outset, Shakyamuni's ultimate purpose lay in enabling all people to attain Buddhahood, to attain their original state. But he does not reveal this in the provisional sutras, in any of them. He reveals it for the first time and only in the Lotus Sutra. The purpose of the provisional sutras is to enable people to part with various attachments. People differ in terms of the types of attachment they have. So Shakyamuni employed various explanations of causes and similes that specific people could best understand. This is at the top of page 58. These teachings were all no more than a means for drawing people toward the goal of attaining Buddhahood, to draw them toward the goal, to draw them toward the Lotus Sutra. In this sense, the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings are regarded as expedient means. Still, the expedient means expounded before the Lotus Sutra arose from the Buddha's compassion. Shakyamuni strove to respond to the different capacities of people, to select teachings that precisely matched their needs and to satisfy everyone. He was waging a struggle of compassion and wisdom because as he went around and tried to reveal what he had realized, he understood that there were all varying capacities and different types of people that could not be approached to have this truth be revealed to them, right? Except to make it something that each person can understand. He says that Shakyamuni would be thinking, what is this person seeking? How should I instruct this person to ensure that he will not deviate from the correct path? He deeply considered each person's circumstance and gave instruction with an earnest, must-win spirit. That's why those teachings are all over the place in what they say. They say various different things that many are in complete opposition to something else that is said in a different sutra, right? He says, though we may speak of the people in the aggregate, they are not an abstract, homogeneous multitude. They are not a colorless mass. Do you understand why he's making that point? Because when we talk to the people, we kind of talk like the people, like they're all the same. All those people are the same. And he's saying, no, they are all completely different. So even though you can speak of them as the people, they're all completely a mass of unique temporary gatherings of the five components, right, of living beings. Though we may speak of the people in the aggregate, in the totality of the sum that they all equal, they are not an abstract. They're not one thing. They are not an abstract homogeneous. Homogeneous means pure, right? Multitude. They are not a colorless mass. They're completely colored. How can the heart of this person before me be open? How can I reinvigorate this specific individual? This is the spirit of Buddhism. When speaking to a large number of people, only if we have the attitude that we are addressing each individual can we offer living words that reverberate in their hearts. Since attaining enlightenment, Shakyamuni devoted himself to teaching the law for individuals. Because his words and phrases were uttered for individuals with their happiness in mind, the law inspired one person after another. Because he waged such a struggle, he sent people's hearts a fresh breeze, dispelling the dark clouds of doubt and anxiety and causing the sun of hope and happiness to emerge. Because he regarded the individual with such warmth, people from all walks of life, young and old, men and women, gathered with joy and enthusiasm to hear Shakyamuni speak. And of course, he's moving around the country of that we know as India today, from region to region to region, community to community. He never stops moving in an attempt to reach more and more people with this message. Shakyamuni preached the expedient teachings because he sympathized with the people whose lives were steeped in illusion and suffering. He was impelled. Now, what's impelled mean? Internally motivated. In other words, propelled would be to be pushed forward by something else. Impelled is you pushing your motivation. His compassion is, he was impelled by his compassion to get rid of their illusion and suffering. He was impelled by the desire to somehow help them. This led him to consider, by what means can I save them from suffering? How might I liberate them from illusions? In other words, expedience arose from his desire to help people. His compassion gave birth to wisdom. Does everybody understand where President Ikeda is going with this? Because it's actually in the first of his three-part series, when he talks about the living Buddha. The living Buddha is the first of the living Buddha, and then I forget what the second one is. But at any rate, he's talking about the reality that Shakyamuni was a great teacher. Okay? And what he was trying to teach was the Buddhism that Shakyamuni had arise in his life. That Shakyamuni was describing with his actual movement and what he was doing, right? He was being the person that he was actually encouraging everyone else to become. Do you understand? All right, so he couldn't do everything on a basis of an actual explanation that was verbatim. It had to be something that met the capacities of the people that he was teaching. Shakyamuni aroused a great mercy and resolved to save all people from suffering. At that time, the Buddhas of the 10 directions appeared, right? The sutra, the Lotus Sutra, and urged Shakyamuni on, saying, but following the examples of all the other Buddhas, you will employ the power of expedient means. We too make distinctions and preach the three vehicles. Okay? We too utilize provisional teachings to bring people to the point that they're able to apprehend the teaching of the perfect teaching. Thereupon, Shakyamuni, preparatory to expounding the law, never known before, never revealed to the Sahe world, began to expound the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings via expedient means. Okay, he starts this process at the very beginning. All right. Expedient means are expressions of wisdom serving to raise people up. Shakyamuni, armed with words of compassion and wisdom, thus resolutely took the first step on the difficult journey to expound the law for the salvation of all people. And he so raised the curtain on Buddhism, which sends out a message of happiness for all humankind. this teaching had never existed before, right? So this is now its expression to all humanity for the sake of all humanity, even though it's happening in India. The secret and wonderful expedient means of the Lotus Sutra. This is the last paragraph on page 59, and now he's going to get into the explanation of expedient means as it relates to provisional teachings and expedient means as it relates to the perfect teaching. He says, as I have already mentioned, the secret and wonderful expedient means of the Lotus Sutra. As I have already mentioned, the expedient means to which this passage refers are the expedient means of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings. Okay, because what is expedient means again? Is it a specific thing? No, it's anything that helps propel one to the understanding of the correct truth. Okay? So expedient means are all over the place. We go through expedient means in chanting Daimoku and thinking that the Gohonzon's doing something for us before we come to the realization that it's us doing it. Do you understand? That's an expedient understanding. All right? So, as I have already mentioned, the expedient means to which this passage refers, and I just lean forward again, so. As I have already mentioned, the expedient means to which this passage refers are the expedient means of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings. These are not to be confused with the expedient means indicated by the title of the second chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Because that's the Lotus Sutra, right? That's not provisional teachings, expedient means, right? Profound significance is attached to the expedient means of the Lotus Sutra. Tentai identifies 3 types of expedient means. Adaptations of the law expedient means that can lead one in, and the secret and wonderful expedient means. The first 2 correspond to the expedient means of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings and constitute provisional teachings. All right? The secret and wonderful expedient means, the last one, is the teaching that contains the truth. Secret and wonderful. Wonderful law, right? Never known before. Secret. Get it? Contains the truth. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. All right? Adaptations of the law expedient means are the various teachings expounded according to the differing capacities of the people. Though through these teachings, Shakyamuni brought benefit to people of various capacities. Expedient means that can lead one in. The second indicate the teachings the Buddha preached as a gateway to the true teachings. Okay? Pre-Lotus Sutra, provisional teachings, right? Different than the Hinayana provisional teachings, right? All right. These expedients of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings serve to guide people to the wisdom of the Buddha. They are the means for directing people until they have reached the Lotus Sutra. That's the entire function of all of the sutras prior to the Lotus. Okay? They are strictly preparatory. Okay? And as Shakyamuni indicates when he says, honestly discarding expedient means in the Lotus Sutra, the expedient means of the pre-Lotus Sutra teaching should be discarded once the Lotus Sutra has been expounded. Okay? But that's not to be confused with the expediency of the first half of the Lotus Sutra and the second half, right? Shakyamuni dared to express the truth in words, because where's the expedient means chapter? The second chapter. That's in the first half, right? Yep. Okay. So, Honmana Shakyaman, right? Shakyamuni dared to express the truth in words. By contrast, the expedient of the Lotus Sutra is not an expedient that ought to be discarded. By contrast, the expedient of the Lotus Sutra, or the expedient means chapter of the Lotus Sutra, is what he's really talking about, or anything that's in the first 14 chapters, is not an expedient that ought to be discarded. It is the teaching of the truth. At the same time, however, it is still always just an expedient, because the actual Ichinen Sansa is contained in the 16th chapter, not anywhere else. You get it? And it's gone by the supernatural powers of thus come one, or something like that, right? Okay, so it is still always an expedient. Although the second chapter explains the truth, it is titled not truth, but expedient means, right? Herein lies the profound significance of the secret and wonderful expedient means. In the opening of expedient means, we are told that the wisdom of the Buddhas is infinitely profound and immeasurable and difficult for all voice hearers and cause awakened ones to comprehend. It is the ultimate teaching that defies expression through words and so cannot be explained. But unless the wisdom of the Buddhas is expressed, all people will forever remain shut away in darkness. For this reason, the Buddha ventures to put it into words. Top of page 61. Compared with the inexpressible truth, the words the Buddha uses to expound it are expedients. Get it? At the same time. So the truth we understand and perceive in our life is the truth. Our ability to communicate it can only be done as an expedient. That's for sure, because I cannot tell you what I feel and know. I can't put it in a way that you would be able to know why I'm saying what I'm saying, because it's all based on experience, all based on teachers, it's all based on teaching, right? That I've read, okay? Compared with the inexpressible truth, the words the Buddha uses to expound it are expedients. At the same time, it is through these words that people can be saved. They can generate their actual personal Buddhahood. All right? The words of the Lotus Sutra that the Buddha expounded in accordance with one's own mind constitute the secret and wonderful expedient means. More than simply a means, these words are an expedient at one with the Buddha's wisdom. They are Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand? So, regarding the words of the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren Daishonin says things like, its words are the ultimate reality. All 69,384 characters of the sutra, each of which is a Buddha. When you cast your eyes upon the words of the Lotus Sutra, you should consider that you are beholding the living body of the thus come one Shakyamuni. Nichiren thus repeatedly emphasizes the oneness of the Buddha's wisdom and the words whereby it is expressed. Do you understand? Right? Okay, so in a sense, it could be said that the expedience of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings and the expedient of the Lotus Sutra are entirely opposite in their directionality. The Japanese term for expedient means hoben, derives from the Sanskrit upaya, meaning approach. The pre-Lotus Sutra teachings enable people to move away from illusion and approach enlightenment. The direction, in other words, is toward the wisdom of the Buddhas. This is the direction of the adaptations of the law expedient means, and the expedient means that can lead one in. Those first two, right? These expedients are no longer of any use once we arrive at the teachings of the Lotus Sutra. Okay? That's why we blow them off in the latter day of the law. Do you understand? They're not necessary anymore, because the Lotus Sutra has been revealed and the original teachers are all in place to teach it. In the Lotus Sutra, by contrast, Shakyamuni articulates the wisdom of the Buddhas according with his own mind, the mind of the Buddha. The directionality of this expedient is thus that of the Buddha approaching the world of human beings instead of human beings approaching the world of the Buddha, right? Like the first two. This is the secret and wonderful expedient because it reveals the truth that you're already a Buddha yourself as you currently exist. Through the power of the Lotus Sutra, pre-Lotus Sutra teachings take on importance as partial expressions of the truth. Through the power of the Lotus Sutra, pre-Lotus Sutra teachings take on importance as partial expressions of the truth. Why? How can that be so? Because they can be utilized to express truths of the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, as Nichiren utilized them. Do you understand? All right. So through the power of the Lotus Sutra, pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, so the wisdom period and all that, take on as partial. They are said to be revealed and unified in the teaching of the Lotus Sutra. Page 62. revealing the power of the mystic law through our own struggles, which is what we do. The wisdom of the Buddhas revealed in the Expedient Means chapter is the true aspect of all phenomena. Put another way, it is the truth that all living beings are Buddhas. This is the point. We'll keep coming back to it over and over again. Daisaku Ikeda has already said it 100 times. Here he's saying it again. Put another way, it is the truth that all living beings are Buddhas. The secret of the secret, wonderful, expedient means indicates that the Buddha concealed or kept secret the truth for the first 42 years of his preaching life, expounding it only in the Lotus Sutra, that all living beings are Buddhas. You with me? Okay. When viewed from the standpoint of the Lotus Sutra, however, all the provisional teachings are included in the sutra as partial explanations of the truth that all living beings are Buddhas. Okay? This inclusion is termed wonderful, because once that truth is revealed, it can be accessed in the other teachings that preceded it. This is exemplified in the parable of the jewel in the robe, related in the prophecy of enlightenment for 500 disciples, the 8th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Everybody knows that story? Right? So what's the significance of that story? That you were always the Buddha no matter what. You just didn't know it. All right, I read it. A man is given a priceless jewel by a close friend who sews it into the lining of the man's robe while the man drowses in a drunken stupor. Not realizing he possesses the jewel, the man suffers hardships and is always in want. Much later, he meets the friend again, and only then does he discover that all along he's had this jewel of great value. The man's friend, the Buddha, knew that the man representing the beings of the 9 worlds possessed the jewel, the world of Buddhahood, in his robe, even though the man failed to realize it. Okay? An ordinary human being is a Buddha. This is difficult and wonderful to understand. Very difficult to understand. There's the difference between actual enlightenment and theoretical enlightenment. Unless we believe we possess the Buddha nature, it will remain forever secret. We're taught to have the faith that that is the case, right? Until we have that actual realization. That's stage 1 through stage 6. However, once we recognize it, once we've attained Buddhahood, which is really what he's saying there, it is no longer secret, and our wonderful powers appear, Daisaku Ikeda says. Let me say it again. However, once we recognize it, it is no longer secret, and our wonderful powers appear. Our powers of the Buddha, that is us. Do you understand? Yeah. Not the gift from the Gohonzon powers that have been expedients up to that point in time. Do you understand? All right. Unless we... Okay. President Toda said, we are merely ordinary unenlightened beings. Pardon me. That we are merely ordinary unenlightened beings is the secret and wonderful expedient. The truth is that we are Buddhas. To realize this truth is to understand the secret and wonderful expedient. You're with me? Okay, so although we are Buddhas, we are born as common mortals. This is so that through doing our human revolution and showing proof of the mystic law, we can accomplish widespread propagation. We can accomplish our mission for Kosen Rufu. If we had everything from the outset, including good health and riches, then other people could not understand the power of the mystic law. Therefore, we reveal it to them through our struggles as common mortals, and we volunteer for that. And we made every cause for every struggle that we engage in as those common mortals. This is the secret and wonderful expedient. You created the recipe of the life that you live right now. No one else. Victory in life through victory in faith. Page 63. In other words, all of us who believe in the Gohonzon, the Lotus Sutra of the latter day of the law, and who are struggling amid the reality of the 9 worlds, exemplify the secret and wonderful expedient. As long as we live based on the Gohonzon, then any and all sufferings become expedient means for us to strengthen and deepen the world of Buddhahood in our lives. Sufferings and joys and everything that happens to us become expedient means for us to reveal the power of the mystic law. Those events are events, but in reality they're an extension of the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo being expressed by the living entities of the Buddhas of the latter day of the law. Do you understand? Right. So it is said that life is like a drama. Whether in the world of business, education, or the home, each person plays a role in a drama. Though the role is itself an expedient means, all right, should the actor abandon it, he or she will be at a loss for a mission. When acting out our respective roles, we manifest our own inner truth most fully. Daily life equals faith, and the world of Buddhahood appears nowhere except on the stage of the reality of the 9 worlds. We enact the drama of human revolution on the stage of our lives, from misery to happiness, from disappointment to hope, from fate to mission, from suffering to eternal joy. The driving force that makes these dynamic transformations possible is faith in the mystic law. Dialogue is the lifeline of Buddhism. The Buddha's fundamental objective is to develop in the lives of all people a wisdom equal to his own. As this implies, we tell others about Buddhism because fundamentally we venerate their lives. We care about them becoming happy. If, on the other hand, we had the attitude, even if I tell this person about Buddhism, it couldn't possibly do any good, then we simply would not bother talking to them. We tell people about Buddhism because we respect them as human beings, because we trust the person we can conduct tenacious dialogue. Saying, I have widely expounded my teachings and have used countless expedient means to guide living beings, Shakyamuni indicates that he has guided people through free and boundless dialogue. Shakyamuni and Nichiren Daishonin both spread the law through talking and speaking out in the very midst of the people. Taneso Buramakaguchi and Josei Toda were also experts at dialogue. Regardless of the social standing of the person they were addressing, they always spoke with dignity and conviction. They created a history of such conversation. The power of dialogue changes people's hearts. Sincere dialogue is the sunlight that can soften and melt hearts that are thoroughly frozen over. Clear, confident words are the fresh breeze that dispels clouds of illusion. Buddhist dialogue is the foundation for bringing change to people's lives. Shakyamuni says that he has conducted compassionate dialogue and spoken earnestly with a must-win spirit in order to help others. He has exercised every ounce of wisdom and ingenuity to ensure that his words might reach people's hearts. This is the significance of the various causes and various similes to which he refers. In other words, he continually spoke out and conducted dialogue, explaining the reason behind the unfolding of actions and events and employing examples to make his teaching easy to understand. Bottom of page 64. The cause to dedicate one's life to Kosen Rufu. Various causes refers to causes and their effects, to the origin of things and to the relations or connections that exist between self, other, and between all things. One Buddhist scripture at the top of page 65, for example, explains that causes and relations associated with King Ashoka through the story of 2 young boys, virtue victorious and invincible, who made offerings to Shakyamuni. Let me say that again. One Buddhist scripture, for example, explains the causes and relations associated with King Ashoka through the story of 2 young boys, virtue victorious and invincible, who made offerings to Shakyamuni. Virtue victorious offered the Buddha a mud pie, while invincible pressed his alms together in reverence. Shakyamuni then explains to his disciple Ananda that virtue victorious is sure to be reborn as a king named Ashoka. Later, according to traditional accounts, virtue victorious due to the causes he formed in making an offering to the Buddha, was born as Ashoka, the son of King Bindusara. In the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, through examples such as these, Shakyamuni strove to help people awaken to the strict law of cause and effect operating in their lives. Still greater significance attaches to the causes expounded in the Lotus Sutra. These concern what might be referred to as the life-to-life bond between the Buddha and the people, the relationship that has existed between the Buddha and living beings since the remote past. Let me start over on that paragraph and say it again. Still greater significance attaches to the causes. Okay, so he says still greater significance. So you want to talk about great significance, you know, the little boy giving the mud pie to Shakyamuni becoming Ashoka. That's pretty significant, right? Mm-hmm. What he's now saying is as great a significance as the causal relationship of that parable may indicate something to be, still greater significance attaches to the causes expounded in the Lotus Sutra, because that story isn't from the Lotus Sutra. Okay? These concern what might be referred to as the life-to-life bond between the Buddha and the people. Pardon, that might be from the Lotus Sutra. Excuse me for saying that. I'm not sure. Still greater significance attaches to the causes expounded in the Lotus Sutra. These concern what might be referred to as the life-to-life bond between the Buddha and the people, the relationship that has existed between the Buddha and the living beings since a remote past. In connection with this, President Toda said, all right, and understand the reason that I'm stuttering here. Still greater significance. I'm trying to make this point because the point I'm making is about bodhisattvas of the earth in the original teaching. Okay? Still greater significance attaches to the causes expounded in the Lotus Sutra that led to the revealing of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. These concern what might be referred to as the life-to-life bond between the Buddha and the people, your teacher and your original state. The relationship that has existed between the Buddha and living beings since the remote past. Okay? In connection with this, President Toda said, regarding the meaning of various causes, in the remote past of the beginningless time, we were followers of the original Buddha, Nichiren Daishonin. That's why we're born in the latter day of the law. Understand that, okay? Because of this cause, now, in the latter day of the law, more than 600 years after Nichiren's passing here in Japan, a country steeped in misery, we as his disciples have appeared as poor people. We demonstrate that by believing in this Gohonzon, we can become wealthy. When we recall the cause we made in having promised to accomplish Kosen Rufu, our poverty and other sufferings will vanish in an instant and become the means for us to achieve what we're supposed to achieve in our lifetimes. Because what are we supposed to achieve in our lifetimes as bodhisattvas of the earth? The proof and validity of the supremacy of the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, of the three great secret laws. Okay? To prove the power of the mystic law, we need to experience various worries and struggles in our present existence. Having promised in the primal moment, Kuanganjo, of the infinite past, Kuanganjo, to accomplish the widespread propagation of the mystic law as the original disciples of the original teacher, we have now been born to carry out this mission. Do you understand? Okay, because we're bodhisattvas of the earth. We're true Buddhists. This is the whole significance of us versus anything else. Anything else that's not Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is not the truth. It's an expedient. All right? Okay. It is impossible that a bodhisattva of the earth could remain submerged in suffering or be defeated by hardships. What'd that just say? It is impossible for you to lose. You're a bodhisattva of the earth who chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the object of devotion of the essential teaching. it is impossible that you could remain submerged in suffering or be defeated by hardships. Only if you allow yourself to be. Once we realize the cause, namely that we freely chose our circumstances so we could prove the validity of Buddhism, can we definitely win. What's that saying? Only once we believe the teaching of the mission of the Bodhisattvas of the earth and what gives them rise and what is reflected in their life are we capable of accepting it and eating it for lunch, showing it's the reason why we were born, being the Buddha in our present form.
Yes.
Okay? It's only when we don't see this as something that's been put on us, or something that's not reflecting the truth of some power that's supposed to miraculously save us or prevent any and all harm. That's bullshit. Nothing like that exists in life, period. Okay? So how could it exist in Buddhism? It cannot. Buddhism is life. Okay? So we adorn ourselves with the accoutrements of the Sahi world, which we came to turn into the Buddha land. All right? It is impossible that a bodhisattva of the earth, top of page 66, first full paragraph, it is impossible that a bodhisattva of the earth could remain submerged in suffering or be defeated by hardships. Once we realize the cause, namely that we freely chose our circumstances so we could prove the validity of Buddhism because we're Buddhists, then we can definitely win. One person's victory provides an illustration for all. Next, various similes refers to the allegories and parables Shakyamuni expounded in the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, using natural reason and examples from immediate life experience to explain difficult Buddhist principles makes them easy to understand. This is Shakyamuni's purpose in employing similes, similarities, things that go along the same line to help you understand what the hell he's being talking about. The use of similes, therefore, arises from compassion for others because you're trying to help them understand something they won't be able to understand otherwise. Precisely because of the Buddhist compassion being so strong, precisely because the Buddhist compassion is so strong, he expounds skillful similes in hopes of making his teaching as easy as possible to understand. The Buddha, adapting his preaching to the people's capacity, draws comparisons with a wide variety of natural phenomena and common observations. For example, and this is very cool, listen to this. For example, in the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, he variously compares earthly desires to a fierce current that sweeps people along, to a shade that conceals the light of the Buddha nature, to the flames that consume one's body and mind, to poison that harms one greatly, and to a dense forest where those who become lost can never find their way out. In this way, he taught people the fearfulness of and tried to cause them to renounce earthly desires. Okay, do we renounce our earthly desires as part of Nichiren disciples? No. No. Simply renouncing, right? We chant for things, right? That's not renouncing your earthly desires. Simply renouncing earthly desires, becoming a monk, parched rags and all that shit. Simply renouncing earthly desires, however, does not amount to attaining enlightenment, because anybody can do that. The similes of, a lot of people do that and think that they're all that in a bag of chips because they have. The similes of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings explain that the Buddha wisdom from one angle only. In fact, there is the danger that if we become preoccupied with these similes, it will actually make it harder to attain Buddhahood, because we'll seek it from the standpoint of the provisional teachings. By contrast, the similes of the Lotus Sutra are at one with the Buddha wisdom. They won't lead to a conflict. That's because they reveal and express the Buddha's enlightenment and wisdom just as they are. Our experiences are like the parables explaining the power of faith, page 67. Moreover, viewed from the standpoint of the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, it might be said that all sutras, including the Lotus Sutra, are grand similes to help people understand the Gohonzon of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. In Nichiren Buddhism, instances of actual proof of faith manifesting in our daily lives are also similes and parables explaining the Gohonzon's power. These illustrations of actual proof eloquently testify to the truth of the Gohonzon. Regarding various similes, President Toda explained that the life or death struggles of Nichiren's contemporaries and the benefit they received serve as similes and parables for us in modern times. And they do. That's what the Gosho, how we utilize the Gosho, isn't it? We learn all about Shijo Kingo and Nanjo Tokimitsu and all these dudes. There is Shijo Kingo who overcame hardships in his place of work, like the Ikegami brothers who brought their father who had opposed their faith to convert to the Daishonin's teaching. Nanjo Tokimitsu, who defeated the devil of illness and dedicated his life to the mission of a successor. The lay nun Myoichi, who struggled in the cause of faith for herself and on behalf of her deceased husband. And the list goes on. The actual proof shown by each follower who overcame difficult circumstances is a source of great encouragement for us as we face similar problems. And our stories will serve as likewise sources of encouragement to others in the future. This same principle applies to our sharing our own experiences. One person's victorious experience can provide courage, hope, and heartfelt understanding to many others. That's what we all do, right? As we progress in faith, we help people that are younger in faith. We use our experiences to encourage them, right? That's exactly what he's talking about here. Our victories become splendid illustrations of how many others can win. Our triumphs over hardship provide many others with confidence. If that's the case, then I can win too. If that person can win, everyone can be victorious. When talking about the power of the mystic law, people may discuss your victory as a parable, saying, just look at him, for example, or look at the human revolution she is carrying out. In this sense, let us compose many dramas of human revolution for the sake of others. Let us adorn our lives with many various causes and various similes, and let us decorate our communities like flower gardens filled with many and varied dramas of the human revolution, with one person after another realizing victory and becoming happy. We're almost done. Perfect. The wisdom to discern the true nature of attachments. Really grab what he's about to say here in these last couple of pages. The wisdom to discern the true nature of attachments, because the provisional teachings will always talk about attachments as something that you need to try and become unattached to, right? Right. Shakyamuni says that he tried to free people from desires and illusions by employing causes and similes. The fundamental cause of people's unhappiness lies in their tendency to develop attachments of various kinds. An attachment, just as it sounds, is a fetter on one's heart. It indicates earthly desires, cravings, and the like. In the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, Shakyamuni taught the people of the 9 worlds, whose lives were steeped in misery, the path for freeing themselves from such attachments. That is, he caused them to renounce their attachments. The spirit of the Lotus Sutra, however, is not to eradicate earthly desires. When we base ourselves, that's Daisaku Ikeda just said that, that wasn't me. When we base ourselves on the mystic law, we can transform desires, just as they are, into enlightenment. This is the principle that earthly desires are enlightenment. The former affairs of the Bodhisattva Medicine King chapter of the Lotus Sutra says, it, the Lotus Sutra, can cause living beings to cast off all pain. Regarding this, Nichiren says that cast off should be interpreted as becoming enlightened concerning. Do you understand what he's getting at here? It's not the elimination of the things that you do. It's the purpose for which you do them. It's the elimination of the delusion and the replacement of that delusion with correct enlightened understanding. Okay? So, in Nichiren Buddhism, therefore, cause them to renounce their attachments should be interpreted as cause them to become enlightened concerning their attachments, to perceive the negativity aspect as a potentiality, and how to reap the full benefit by eliminating that. It is not a matter of eradicating attachments, but seeing them clearly. In other words, rather than cause us to abandon our earthly desires and attachments, our Buddhist practice enables us to discern their true nature and use them as the driving force to become happy. We want something, we chant more, right?
Right.
We need to do human revolution. We begin to perceive ourselves more correctly, right? We change our behavior because we see it's causing us unhappiness. We do it because we want to, not because somebody tells us to. The truth is that we could not, in fact, eradicate our attachments even if we so wished. You couldn't get rid of them if you wanted to, and that's why that's not what we try to do. For the sake of argument, even if it were feasible, doing so would make it impossible to live in the real world. Got to have an attachment to food, right? Got to have an attachment to a warm place to sleep at night, right? What is important is that we make full use of our attachments rather than allow them to control us. In order to do that, it is necessary that we clearly recognize them for what they are. That's your Buddha nature at work. Make full use of your attachments. Page 69. We're at the end here. President Toda said, the Gohonzon enables us to perceive our attachments just as they are. I believe that each of you has attachments. I, too, have attachments. Because we have attachments, we can lead interesting and significant lives. For example, to succeed in business or introduce Buddhism to many others, we must have attachment to such activities. Our faith enables us to maintain these attachments in such a way that they do not cause us suffering. Our faith enables us to maintain, sustain, continue with these attachments in such a way, in such a manner that they do not cause us suffering. Rather than being controlled by attachments, we need to fully use our attachments to become happy. The essence of Mahayana Buddhism, top of page 70, lies in developing the state of life to clearly discern and thoroughly use our attachments, thus leading lives made interesting and significant by cultivating strong attachments. In short, we should cause the firewood of earthly desires to burn high and to that same extent chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo sincerely and take action. In doing so, our earthly desires become a springboard to propel us toward our attainment of Buddhahood. Faith means creating a mountain for ourselves, climbing it, and then starting out again. In this process, we develop from a state of life in which we are caught up with our own small worries to one in which we can challenge progressively greater worries for the sake of a friend, for many others, for all humankind. We can worry about Kosen Rufu, right? Toward that end, it is important that we always consider the purpose of our actions. When we clearly establish our fundamental objective in life, we can use our attachments most fully and profitably. We can turn them into tailwinds to propel us toward happiness. This principle offers an extremely valuable guide for living in modern society, where people are constantly swept along by various wants and cravings. And that's the end of chapter 3, and we'll start on page 71, chapter 4 next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.